All right, welcome back. This is Compass Podcasts, and today I'm trying stuff a little bit differently. I'm going to be releasing my podcast on Anchor and posting that link up on Twitter as I usually have been, but I'm going to try and do video with this podcast as well, as I've kind of been meaning to try and kickstart my YouTube for a while now, and I really... I've tried doing the video with the podcast, and it's always awkward trying to get started because I've never been one that's really good at talking directly to a camera without somebody else in the room to really converse with. So it's kind of been a little bit of a struggle for me to try and figure it out. And hopefully I can really make this work. For the people who only listen to the audio of this, whether that be on Anchor or Spotify or possibly Google Podcasts or even another platform that I'm on, I will share that link over my Twitter as well. And if I can, I'll put a link somewhere on Anchor if they do have that option. So that way you can go find the link to the video. They're on YouTube, and also see about posting the video, if this does work out, on my Twitter as well. So you can find that there. But I'm sorry for not releasing a podcast last week. I did have a busy weekend last week, so I really didn't have a whole lot of time to throw them together, and I didn't really want to work on that all last minute. But and I really wasn't sure on kind of where I wanted to go with topics and stuff. Excuse me. So I, just kind of put things on hold and kind of dragged my thoughts together a little bit this week, and hopefully I'll have something worth going over this week for you. And 2 weeks ago, the topic that I did was more addressing growing up again, as I've kind of done with other podcasts in the past, such as growing up sheltered, homeschool topics, just kind of along those general guidelines. And so I kind of did something a little bit different 2 weeks ago when I did the topic of was I raised to be racist. I thought that was a little bit more outside the box, something that I could explore a little bit that wasn't so repetitive, I guess, because I feel like I don't want to get into a rut where I'm just kind of repeating over and over the same type of stuff. Like, I really like the pattern that I'm in, where I can essentially trace stuff back, as I've been trying to do with how I was raised and ideas that I followed, and how I just kind of, as I grow up and started to get out on my own, just kind of repeated stuff verbatim for what I was taught, by what I was taught from my parents. And thus, birthed the topic of was I raised to be racist, exploring my racial illiteracy and how I might be unintentionally racist, even though I never thought I was. And so this topic isn't necessarily, I will explore how it might pertain to me, but first and foremost, I'm going to be addressing, did I have a misogynist for a father? And negative ideals on a young mind, that young mind being me, of course. Now, obviously, in today's world with the Me Too movement and people being outspoken against sexism and stuff like that, and misogynists, I wanted to, that's obviously not a phrase or something that you throw around lightly. It's not something that you just call someone flippantly off the cuff. It's quite the accusation, and you need to be careful with it. And so obviously I wouldn't throw that term out there in association with my father, of all people, even though I may not talk to him on a daily basis or at all. That's still not something that I feel comfortable with just throwing around flippantly, of course. So I wouldn't ask this question, did I have a misogynist for a father, unless I didn't have a way to support my theory, as it were, with memories of the past and memories of growing up, and how I remember my father going about certain topics, whether that was religiously or politically or otherwise. So what really defines a misogynist? Well, according to the Oxford Dictionary, it is strongly prejudiced against women. Now, obviously, that's in terms of As far as definition goes, I guess that isn't really locked down. It's just kind of strongly prejudiced against women. So while it feels generalized, because prejudice, I feel like, is such a broad term. A lot of people don't really take it too seriously. So I looked at another definition from the Merriam-Webster dictionary, which defines it very similarly, but using slightly different words. Feeling or showing or characterized by hatred of women. Now, I know hate is a very extreme term, and you can use hate in a lot of ways. Hatred of race in regards to racism, hatred of women as it's defined in here. So why would I be pulling the theory out that possibly my father shared a hatred of women? Because that is a pretty big accusation to be tossing out there. Well, there's a few reasons, and I when I think back about growing up, I know that my family liked to discuss politics, and while I was very young at the time, I didn't really understand it. It was just kind of a lot of yes and okay and yeah, sure, and just agreeing with what my dad would say or my mom would say or possibly one of my older brothers would say. Because I was young and I didn't really understand it, and I didn't have the ability to wrap my head around it effectively. So it was just a lot of going along with the flow of what everyone else said, which is why I think as I grew up instead of got out on my own, because I was sheltered and I was only surrounded by those ideas that were shared with me from my parents. That's why when I got out on my own, I expressed a lot of those ideas, and I wasn't essentially a free thinker. I didn't think for myself. I was only repeating everything that I was told to say, or rather what I was told to think. So did I do the same thing my father did? Was I just repeating everything that he taught me? Now, a lot of people will say, like, well, you weren't taught that because, they didn't go, my dad go out of the way to teach me to be sexist? A lot of people might say no, but ideals are very, they're transferable, especially when they're on a young and impressionable mind, and when they're with someone, a child, who looks up to their father or father figure. I'm going to follow in my father's footsteps, whether I like it or not, at least for a little while, until I get to a moment of clarity where I can look back, like what I'm trying to do now with this podcast, and explore situations and ideals that I might have been taught that are wrong. Like, was I raised to be racist, like I already said. Now, so what moments do I remember where my dad expressed ideas or sexist ideals or misogynistic ideals? Well, my family liked to discuss politics, as I said. And I remember, I don't remember what election it was. I remember I was maybe like between 6 or 10, something like that. So I'm not even going to try to guess right now. I don't really want to have to do the math in my head. I don't want to put myself on the spot right here. So, but I do remember my dad expressing stuff like, oh yeah, a Republican is always better than a Democrat. It doesn't matter who it is. But he did say that a man should be in office, and that a woman, I don't remember his exact wording, but essentially he said a woman has no business being president, because a woman isn't capable of running a country, because men are supposed to be leaders. Now, if that is not, what's the term I'm looking for? Now, of course that is extremely sexist. That's the equivalent of what my dad would say, as in, a man is supposed to be the head of the household. A man is supposed to lead the home. And he would quote, now, of course, I started off this topic, tracing it back by talking about his view on politics. But this also goes into how my family was formatted, how we operated as a whole. And if you're more curious about that, you could go check out my podcast that I did with my brother on the family systems theory, where we kind of break down how our family functioned as a whole and what family system we fell under. Super interesting. If you have not listened to that one, I advise you to go give that a listen. I don't have it on video available, but you can go find it on Anchor and Spotify, and I know Google Podcasts as well. But as far as, his sexist view on religion goes, I remember him quoting Bible verse of someone they like to quote all the time: "Wives, submit to your husbands." And he would use this all the time, and he would say that, men are supposed to be the head of the household. And I remember him having, men are supposed to be the leaders. Men lead, women follow, essentially. And I remember him having this book of poetry. It was like Man's Book of Poetry, something or other. I don't remember exactly what it was for. It was like encouraging men to step up and lead. Nothing about women in this book. It was all about men, because according to the Bible verse that I'd like to quote, women are not the leaders of the household or in any format inside of the family. Which is, I don't know how accurate it would be to say that it was my mom's decision to stay home. I do remember her saying that she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, so maybe. But I also know that my dad had the opinion that the man should be the provider of the household, and therefore he should be the one that works, and the wife should stay home and cook and clean and maintain the residence and take care of the kids and so on and so forth. And in this book of poetry, it was more the underlying ideas behind it. This is what my father believed, and it's what he supported. It wasn't just a maybe. It's definitely what he believed in, and he was putting these dangerous ideas upon his children, upon his sons, and upon his daughters. It wasn't just me and my older brothers getting bombarded with this with these sexist ideals. It was also my sisters being bombarded with this idea that they have to submit to the will of man, and they can't be their own person or leader, and they need to fall in line, essentially. Now, did these ideas impact me as I grew up and got out on my own further and further? I would say yes, maybe not to the extent that racial illiteracy impacted me necessarily, but it did have a strong impact, as in as I got out on my own, a lot of pressure. I felt a lot of pressure on me to take care of everyone. Because I was the man, I had to ensure everyone was cared for and okay and doing good. And I remember staying with my aunt and uncle when I was in high school, and me constantly being worried about everyone else, to the point that even I would overlook my own depression at the time, and my own emotions, because I felt like I had to watch out for everyone else in the family. And I remember when, other people and my other siblings were dealing with depression and stuff, I would, I constantly go to my uncle and I'd say, "Oh yeah, how is my sister doing? How is my brother doing?" And I would always go, worry about this and worry about that. And I remember finally my aunt sitting me down and telling me that it's not my responsibility. And I remember getting really frustrated by that. And, no, obviously my parents bestowed this responsibility upon me, So you obviously can't take that away from me. You can't tell me no, because they told me that I have a responsibility to look out for and care for everyone in this family. So why are you the one telling me that I can't? This is not my responsibility. You're not my parent. So who gave you the right to tell me? Who told you that you can tell me what to do? Because obviously my parents told me that this is what is expected of me, and I was putting all this pressure on myself. And it really took that a while to sink in effectively. And after, my aunt told me that, I remember a little while later, I don't remember exactly how long. There was a lot going on there around that time. We were going over to Seattle for court and, to be a witness on the stand and all this crazy stuff. And so a lot of that timeline for me, at least for me, just kind of all runs together. But it took a while for that to really sink in and realize that it wasn't my responsibility. I had to take care of myself. And while I'm never going to stop caring for people in my family, for my brothers and my sisters and my aunt and my uncle even, I'm never going to stop caring for them. I'm not going to stop loving them. That doesn't mean that I have a responsibility as a man and the leader of the household, because I am not the leader of the household. I don't have that right bestowed upon me. I'm not some leader that has to step up and have all the women in my life fall in line behind me. That's not how life works, and those ideas are all wrong. And that's why when I look back at and I hear people talk about, you go to church and you hear people talk about that Bible verse, wives submit to your husbands, it rubs me the wrong way because of how I really think of how my father abused that in our household growing up, and how he used that to his advantage, and possibly used it as a way of manipulation to do things the way he wanted and have things done the way that he wanted done. And, maybe I can go over this a little bit further in other podcasts. I really hope this video did work out. I will be sharing this over my Twitter as well. If you do have any suggestions for podcasts of things I learned or things you might want to look at or how my family might have handled things, I know that I did already cover the racist one, I know that I've covered sexist one. It'd be good to know what other people might like me to possibly look at. And let me know your thoughts on the video as well, please. I will share that link to the YouTube if I am successful in getting that up and running. And thank you for listening, and I will see you next week.